in a movie. 3 different occasions that I can count.
It's like the Hoffmeyer spin, but the flip maneuver. But, man, that's but I've just never seen a flip like that. I mean, I know this movie's heightened, but if I was ever a bouncer in a bar and I saw that flip, someone do that to somebody, I'm like, I'm just gonna let him wear himself out for a second. Then I'm gonna go over there.
He earned this fight.
Yeah.
Just stay over there and do your thing.
The worst thing that could ever happen to a bouncer is for him to, as a bouncer, get flipped.
There's no going back to the bar after getting flipped.
I'd quit. I would quit. I remember one time I slipped going to break something up and I fell and everyone started laughing and it made me angrier. Yeah.
Just call it a night after that.
Yeah, I'm out of here, guys. I slipped on beer. I'm like, I'm done. But yeah, so back to the extraction thing that I cut us off on.
I had some thoughts about extraction and Chris Hemsworth killing dozens of people in Bangladesh. So Verhoeven is getting all this praise for this parallel narrative of a militaristic society, whereas you also have the shoot 'em up type of narrative where you're rooting for the soldiers, but you probably shouldn't be rooting for them because it's kind of like this fascist society that was inspired in 30s Italy and Germany. But on the other hand, how many protagonists do we root for all the time in movies that are not good people, like Chris Hemsworth in Extraction? Yeah, he had some internal demons from whatever happened. I can't even remember, but he's killing so many people. I don't see how Verhoeven's message in Starship Troopers is any different from the action movies of today.
No, and all right, so you think about Extraction. His mission was to save one kid, correct?
Correct, yeah.
So, okay, yes, there are a corrupt police force, and there are, but I mean, okay, so you're under, but okay, let's say you're like, oh, they're corrupt cops and they're mercenaries, they deserve to die. But how many stray bullets and rocket launchers took place during this brawl for one kid's life? Like, Chris Hemsworth's out there punching children, and he's hurt. Like, how many stray bullets or shrapnel? How many? Like, but it's played so seriously in rah. I guess I have a better time with it when it's Commando or Starship Troopers. That's so heightened, I guess.
Yeah, Commando, he stood in a field. How many you did the numbers from Commando on how many bullets John, whatever his name, fired in that field, just killing these Central American mercenaries.
How many missed him? How many missed him?
But how is this any different than Commando just murdering people left and right? I'm only bringing this up. We're praising Verhoeven for this parallel narrative, which is really smart, and I think it's innovative. But is it really that different?
Let's see. That's a good question, because he knows what he's doing.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't add. He added that scene with Diz and Johnny. When they got the extra 20 minutes, he adds the shower scene. He wanted to create equality, but he adds that. He adds the blood, the guts. He brought in Kevin Yeager, who had done Nightmare on Elm Street, to show blood and guts. But I think he also wanted to show how nasty it was. Like, he doesn't. It's glorified, but then you see the death and destruction, and you're like, whoa, this is real. So he knew what he was doing, but I think he makes it so heightened that it's not played super real. I don't know. And they're killing bugs? No, but then these bugs are super smart. I don't know. What do you think? I'm trying to draw my thoughts here.
Yeah, I'm just asking you because I don't have an answer. I was just seeing all the praise that Verhoeven is receiving for delivering this parallel narrative. But then I looked at current movies and I don't see much of a difference in rooting for these heroes and protagonists who are just, the body count is just astronomically high, like John Wick, Chris Hemsworth in his Extraction. So I think it's an interesting point that, a lot of praise has come to Verhoeven, but a lot of it just seems like normal now. Or maybe he was just a forerunner in introducing this type of movie that influenced future generations of movies.
Like, all right, so when he did RoboCop, do you remember how violent that was? But then he also wanted to establish race relations with big corporations. But he made that the violence so heightened. And then in Total Recall, I mean, he just murders everybody. But you're kind of wondering, is it real? Is all this murder real? Am I dreaming? What is going on? Is it real? Is it fake? So I think he always does a good job of blending, except for Hollow Man. He does a good job of blending violence with just enough questions or nuance to make it not you. I'm telling you what's nuanced about Extraction?
Nothing.
So I would rather watch incredibly heightened violence or nuanced kickboxer violence than something that plays it perfectly straight.
Agree.
I don't see a point to that. Like The Raid is so bonkers that or The Night Comes for Us is so bonkers that it's just a ballet of blood and you embrace it. But I would rather watch those than those movies that take it super seriously. I really would. If it's based on true story, that's fine. But I don't like this wanton. So I've been hurt before, man, where you watch some of these movies and you're like, man, how many people just die? People talk about maybe Man of Steel, but Man of Steel with all that destruction, he's trying to save billions, and then I guess thousands die in the process. So there's nuance, I guess, to that. But no, I don't like that. I don't like these movies that just play it super safe. And like one guy killing everybody for the sake of one person. That gets old to me. I don't know. So I think what Verhoeven's doing has enough edge and intelligence to it to differentiate itself, I would say. But he knows what he's doing. But he does.
And I don't have an answer to this question. I just thought it was interesting to explore and see if the way he approached things has inspired other movies, or if it's really how much different is it really?
You're right. And I think the problem with his is he's just such a gutsy guy. He'll make a Showgirls. He'll make these movies that are very kind of European centric, very European, like liberal centric, but he takes chance. I just think he'll take chances and make things weird, make things bloody, make things over the top. So that's why I hate the straightforward, like Eraser. I know they have these guns, but it's just tons of innocent people getting murdered. I don't know. Like Mad Max Fury Road, they added levels to the violence, so it made it. These war boys thought they were going to Valhalla. They had been brainwashed to that process. And,
right.
And at the end of it, when these people are dying, it's because they're going back to give a better life to these people who are all suffering because of Immortan Joe. And I guess Starship Troopers, you get the rah-rah, but it's also just showing how they're just using these. You see that cow dying in this movie, and then you have all these humans getting lit up in the same way when they were unprepared. They're just more fodder for it, I guess. And what's interesting too is I was just thinking about this. So when we watch it, right, it's ridiculous that they're high schoolers in the beginning, but at the end of the movie, they look older than the purposely young kids that they have.
Yeah, they made a statement on that when Rico and Jake Busey were introducing to the new squad. They got reinforced, and he was like, "Look at all these young kids."
And they cast young kids.
They did, and it made them look kind of weathered.
Yeah,
kind of like they've been through a pretty nasty deployment, and it was showing in the way they carried themselves and the way they looked.
So I think that's maybe smart that they cast them, because at the end you totally bought into them being the old school guys.
Yeah, good point. It's like you can make someone look older, you can make them look younger. It was right in that sweet spot.
Oh, let me go back to what we were talking about before. So Hollow Man is a movie that Paul Verhoeven said anybody could make. And when you're watching that movie, it's very, it's just, there are scenes where he just sees a lady, Rona Mitra, and he goes over and attacks and rapes her. And then later on, he's assaulting people and he's just killing them. But the violence, there's no flair to it. There's no point to it. It's just, you don't care. It just becomes a slasher movie. Mm-hmm. It's not daring. It's not like saying like these people under a fascist thing, or it's not overly playing it as in RoboCop. It's just violence for violence sakes and attacks for attacks sakes. And it offends me more than anything in Starship Troopers, because it's played so blasé in this movie. Like there's nothing behind it. So that's when I get annoyed with movies, is when they just show that violence like that.
Yeah, there's got to be something more.
Mm-hmm. And that's what his early movies did, and that's what Hollow Man didn't, I guess. So I guess to answer your question is, I guess that's why he gets away with it, right? And that's why it's better, because there's something under it. I guess there's only so long that John Wick can keep killing people for his dog. But I'm still going to watch every single one of the movies because they're great. But I don't know. So that's a good, but that's what I like about Verhoeven movies. You can actually ask these questions about it. And I think that's where a lot of the good action movies come in. So you have The Rock, where Ed Harris gets in over his head, right? And when the Marines die, you feel it, because it's the accidents that they made. Yeah. And then when the rest of his crew turns on Ed Harris, you feel for him because he got in over his head with good intentions, and he brought in people who just wanted the money.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, I wrote that Cracked article about Bokeem Woodbine's background acting in that. So if you read it, go to Mark Hoffmeyer Cracked, you'll read a good article I wrote about that movie, about his acting in that. But yeah, so I mean, there's something behind that. I think that's where good action films live.
Ed Harris was really complex in The Rock. That's for sure.
And then you watch Face Off, which we did the other day, background watched it. It's so insane by John Woo that you see the violence in it, but you're just, it's so stupid, right? It's
Can you imagine
smart.
if John Woo did Starship Troopers?
Holy mackerel. So my fellow teacher, Hakeem, and we just did Hard Boiled, which is one of his classics. It's like a gun ballet. I wouldn't like it. I wouldn't like it. Because Hard Boiled is about these two cops trying to take down these horrible people, drug runners, and, going outside the force to do it. It's kind of his Clint Eastwood. But the gun ballet and Starship Troopers probably wouldn't have been, because he did Wind Talkers. That didn't work. I don't know if his style translates well to war movies. It's more Face Off. It's more Broken Arrow. It's more Hard Boiled, The Killer, small scale, when you can fit those in. Does that make sense?
Yeah, completely.
It shouldn't. Their battle should not have been a ballet. It should have been, like when he blew up the tanker bug. Like it was just big and ugly and fun, and the deaths are brutal and not.
You needed murderous destruction.
Yeah.
Just wanting to just unload this clip on this bug. And I think they showed it, the part when the bug was dead, but the guy was so amped that he just kept firing into the bug. And even though the bug was long gone, it just, he was so fired up and into that culture and that mission that's what he needed to do.
And that's Seth Gilliam from The Wire. So whenever I see him now, I'm like, The Wire! That dude's cool. I like him. Sugar Watkins. No, but I don't know. I think this is, let's see, I have so many notes. But this movie, I guess, where am I trying to get here? I mean, when they're talking about the supreme authority is violence, they put it so far in your face, too.
Yeah, that was the most in your face part of the movie, I think.
And
everything else was kind of subtle, but that was like really, like, but they said it in a classroom setting, I believe.
Exactly.
Right?
In the beginning of the movie, when you're still absorbing.
Yeah. But when it's in a classroom setting, it's hard to, like, I know they're discussed this for a reason, but then later on you don't really connect it unless you're really paying attention. What's that Russian writer who said that if you write a scene and then there's a gun on the wall?
Oh, Chekhov's gun.
Yeah. Make sure that the gun is going to come to play later on in the book. And that was, one of those understated, subtle lines that was a big part of the movie later on.
And then the autopsy scene, you see those little bugs carrying the brain bug later. And Carmen, who's so grossed out by it, cuts off that brain bug's thing.
Oh, yeah. After her buddy's brains got sucked out.
That's when I love these movies, when you have, I don't know, when things come back later. I like tight scripts. I like things that can go back to where they are. Like, does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I think this movie does it. They're talking about, what were they also going big on? Biology as a weapon in this movie as well. So they're kind of talking about how they got smarter, but they're not as smart as they think, but then they turn out to be smarter. And then they had to waste people to do that. And then just the disposability, the people are disposable. And Rico's math skills aren't good, so he has to go into mobile infantry.
And even Xander, the pilot, he ended up not being such a bad guy after all. You hated him in the beginning, and then he wasn't so bad because he got their backs. He flew into a hot zone to pick them up. I mean, he came out shooting.
Yeah, and then his final line was, "Someone like me is going to murder you all."
Yeah, you're right. You're right. He probably had the biggest arc of anyone in the movie.
How do you get those? How does that bug? What does it get from the brains? It's just something sci-fi, correct?
They never explained it.
Yeah.
Like when they sucked out the brains, how they could absorb the information. I'm like, they didn't even bother to understand.
But I think since they call it the brain bug, you just go, oh, okay, cool. Like, that makes sense. Suck a brain.
Yeah, it's giant.
I like when movies do that too, when they just explain it to you. Like, it's a brain bug. Oh, okay, cool. I got it.
And if you're sitting through this entire podcast, I assume you've either seen it or it's been so long, but rewatch the movie. It's definitely worth watching again and thinking about it and all the influences that this movie has made throughout the year, because we talked about the role of protagonists, we talk about inspirations with other movies, and there's a lot there, and I encourage you to watch it on Netflix right now.
Yeah, watch it, enjoy it. Go watch all the extras too. Jeez Louise.
Yeah, it's a rich movie.
I had a scare. I bought a Blu-ray and it didn't work. So then